AM radio, an op-ed column, and Fox News is not enough. I want a center-right nation to fight for its soul, and its soul is represented in the arts. Its soul is represented in a world in which media is everything. AM radio is the lowest form of communication. It's tinny, it's not robust, it's not Avatar. I want Avatar. I want the right to enter the world of media to the extent and invest in media the way that the left does.
The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them, because the people know the truth. The fake media tried to stop us from going to the White House, but I'm president and they're not.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast, a Breitbart.com podcast. The podcast starts now. Here's Curt with today's headlines.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Curt Schilling Podcast. Today we got a good show, great show lined up for today. Judge Jeanine Pirro joins us today, and Chuck Woolery joins us today. I've been waiting to talk to Chuck for a long time, and I'm absolutely honored that Judge Jeanine would come back, and hopefully it'll be something we can do pretty consistently. I got to tell you, the lunacy of the left continues to go on, but there's another little incident and event going on that I wanted you guys to kind of listen in on, and I think it matters in ways that have a lot to do with the upcoming midterms and future elections. A lot of people didn't know that the tech giants, the Silicon Valley, the big boys, the Googles, the Facebooks, were on Capitol Hill again. Representative Gohmert, who, by the way, has no problem asking anybody any questions, was asking them questions about other foreign entities interfering in the election. These are very simple yes-no questions, and listen to the answers he's given by more than one.
Well, but that's not my question. It's just a very direct question. Have you found use? You don't have to be in North Korea to be North Korean intelligence and use. We have foreign governments, intelligence agencies in this country. So it seemed to me you were each a little bit vague about, oh, yes, we found hundreds or whatever. I'm asking specifically, were any of those other countries besides Russia that were using your platform inappropriately? It should be a yes or no.
I don't have the details. I know we definitely work to detect and repel attacks.
I know that, but were any of them other foreign entities other than Russia?
I can certainly follow up with you on that.
So you don't know? You sure seemed anxious to answer the Democrats' questions about Russia influence, and you don't really know of all the people, of all of the groups that inappropriately used your platform. You don't know which were Russians and which were other foreign entities?
Congressman, we certainly have seen attacks from people other than Russians. As far as the details of from whom those attacks have come, I would have to have my team follow up with you on those.
So you don't know about China? You're sure about Russia, but you don't even know about China?
I would have to have my team follow up with you on details.
So you came prepared to help the Democrats establish about Russia, but you can't point out any other country? Is that right?
Congressman, we've put public statements on.
Okay, well, let me go to, you're not answering the question. Let me go to Ms. Downs. How about on Google? Did you detect any other countries besides Russia utilizing your platform inappropriately?
Our security team is trained to protect our services from foreign interference.
Are we going to get to an answer to my
government.
question?
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. That should tell you quite a bit about California being the cesspool that it is, because those are the people running it, and those are most of the people running the Democratic Party, both financially and ideologically. So the hysteria over the Trump meeting with Putin continues, and I tell you what, I had differences of opinion with Rand Paul over the years. I like him. I think he stands for a lot of things that America wants. But I've always had issues. In the last 20 months, I have become an enormous Rand Paul fan. Even I now would vote for the man regardless of what he says because I trust him. I want you to listen to him with CBS This Morning.
Listen, you've heard the avalanche of criticism and negativity, appalling, shameful, disgraceful, shocking. It's coming from all sides, and I'm wondering, you're here this morning, you're doing a cleanup on aisle 3?
Well, I think we ought to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and decide whether or not we want to have conversations with even our adversaries. During the height of the Cold War, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy had a direct line to Khrushchev, and I think the world is a safer and a much better place because we had that line of communication. We had ambassadors. Let me finish my question. If you're going to ask questions, let me finish.
All right, all right.
It was also, I think, a good idea that we've continued to have ambassadors and diplomatic relations with Russia, even though they are our adversaries.
Senator Paul, I don't think anybody would object to trying to have a good relationship with Russia. I think the problem is that he seemed to throw the American intelligence community under the bus while doing that. Is there a part of you that wishes? Is there a part of you that wishes?
I think that's incorrect. I think what you just said, that no one would object to him meeting with Putin. Every Democrat on Capitol Hill objected to him meeting with Putin. Every neoconservative and warmonger on the right also objected to it. So yes, the vast majority of the foreign policy community, the bipartisan consensus, said you shouldn't meet with Putin. They also said he shouldn't meet with Kim. And this is an extraordinary thing about President Trump that should be lauded and not belittled, is that he is willing to meet with adversaries to try to prevent us from having World War III.
That's why I've become a fan of Rand Paul, right there. I mean, I have a lot of differences with the guy. I think that there is certain parts of our Fourth Amendment that have to be treaded on a little bit if you want to stay safe in the modern world. But I couldn't have gained more respect for anybody than I have for him in the last 20 months, because the man stands up for what he believes in. Now we're going to listen. Foreign relations expert and one of the foremost experts on foreign policy in The View's Joy Behar. And her stupidity is at incredible levels, and she continues to bleed stupid every day. The left's use of historical events to compare to modern day is offensive to me, and she just takes the cake. Listen up.
It seems to me that Russia's got something on him because, he's over the edge with this one. He's saying basically to him, please don't snitch. Whatever it is what I saw. Yeah. That's what I saw.
You think the PP tape is or something?
The PP tape is not going to change his basis position. But money laundering, owing money to the Russians, billions of dollars. Jared also had to bail himself out of that building that was going under. There's a lot of money involved. As they say, follow the money. And I think that there was one more thing. There was a cartoon, not a cartoon, it was a picture of FDR on Facebook that I was looking at, and it said, but Hirohito said he didn't do it, meaning when they bombed Pearl Harbor back in World War II. So this is the equivalent of denying that this person did not attack us, this enemy of the state. To me, it rises to the level of treason. But, of course, the Republican Party is never going to go there because they want their Supreme Court justice. Remember that.
She talks about Hirohito and history and all this other stuff. Let's be very clear about something. I think Russia did try to meddle in our election. And if you listen to her comments, you can understand. Here's the thing. Russia tried to meddle in our elections because of people like her. They knew idiots like Joy Behar would buy whatever they were selling. And they have, and they did, and they impacted and affected the very people crying about them interfering. Nothing happened. No votes were changed. We know that. The fact of the matter is the Russians know, and everybody else knows as well, that the liberal wing of the United States of America are some of the most ill-informed, stupid, idiotic, historically ignorant people on the planet. These are all college-educated people with degrees. And I said this last night. You listen to the lady that won in New York, Ocasio-Cortez, who talked about the fact the occupation of Palestine, which is basically the opposite of history, the occupation of Palestine and the Middle East crisis, and then referred to, when pressed on it, said, well, actually, I don't know anything about it, number one. This is a woman who has a degree in foreign relations from BU. They honestly believe that 4 years of college, even if you don't learn shit, is valuable enough to put you in a position of power because you know things. No, you don't know anything. And Joy Behar is another prime example of the ignorance and stupidity that Russia jumped in the election to meddle with, and they got him. People like her are bought it hook, line, and sinker. Tucker Carlson got to sit down with President Trump. He's not a politician, which has been the reason he's been so successful, and the other reason why he is so hated. He is not a politician. Everybody was crying for someone outside the mainstream. We got one, and this is what it looks like. Listen to him talking about whether he's pro-Russia and all the things that the left believes.
The reaction to your press conference in Washington was swift and intense. Former CIA Director John Brennan described it as treasonous and a potentially impeachable offense. Why the push toward conflict with Russia in Washington on both sides?
Well, I think Brennan's a very bad guy, and if you look at it, a lot of things happened under his watch. I think he's a very bad person. I also think that when you watch Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, when you watch all of the things that have happened, and Comey, take a look at that, and McCabe, who's got some pretty big problems, I assume. You look at the deception, the lies, what's gone on in the last fairly long period of time, before I won. I mean, long before I won, during the campaign, I guess probably during the Republican, when I was fighting against 17 other Republicans. So this has been going on for a long time, but these are people that, in my opinion, are truly, they're bad people, and they're being exposed for what they are, and it's a shame that it has to happen, but it's really hurt our country.
I mean, just simple stuff. And let me just repeat something that apparently has escaped the left and the liberals in this country. John Brennan, the former head of the CIA, one of the most powerful people in the world, not in the country, in the world, called it a treasonous, impeachable offense. John Brennan, during the Cold War, at a time when the world was probably at closer to a nuclear war than at any time in our history, John Brennan was a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. He was a member of the Communist Party. Now, this speaks right back to Senator Byrd and the KKK, that the left is trying as hard as it can to, the Trump on the bus moment, and which was stupid, and some of the other things that he's done in his life, they're supposed to carry forward and make those people what they want them to be. Yet we're not supposed to acknowledge the fact that one of your mentors was a member, a Klan member, not just a member, but the leader of his Klan chapter, and that another member of your party and your group was a member of the Communist Party. Those are insignificant things. It's embarrassing. It's shameful and embarrassing. And I got to tell you, though, I'm going to close out with probably one of my favorite sound bites in a long, long time. I want you to listen to Mark Levin on Sean Hannity, and I want you to pay attention for the Stormy Daniels reference, because I'm going to laugh out loud again when I hear it. Listen up.
So I said at the beginning of the show, we have now witnessed the single worst 24 hours in the history of the mainstream media, which is saying a lot because we know how corrupt they are.
What we've learned about the media, several of the hosts and guests, is we have a lot of psychopaths out there, that's for sure.
Okay, how do you really feel?
Well, comparing the president's conference with Putin to Pearl Harbor, 9/11, Kristallnacht, the beginning of the Holocaust, calling him a traitor and treasonous. 2 weeks ago, they said he was running Japanese internment camps and Nazi concentration camps. This is the pseudo-media. And now it comes to Russia. Now the liberals, the media, the Democrats, some Republicans, very upset about Russia. They've had more positions on Russia than Stormy Daniels, as far as I'm concerned. Let me point out some history. This is very, very important. John McCain, God bless him, and others have said that what Trump did at that press conference is the worst interaction we've ever had with Russia, the worst diplomatic disaster ever. I want the American people, forget about the media, I want you to know something. In 1945, at the Yalta Conference, Franklin Roosevelt sold out half of Europe to Stalin. He repeatedly praised Stalin. Franklin Roosevelt is the hero of the Democrat Party. He of Japanese internment camps, too. In Yalta, he gave up half of Europe to the Soviet Union. In 1961, JFK met with Khrushchev. JFK told a friend of his that he was rolled over, that he came across weak, that it was pretty disastrous, his meeting with Khrushchev. And a few weeks later, what do? The Soviets are shipping missiles to Cuba, and they're building a wall in Berlin. In 1975, Gerald Ford in Helsinki with Brezhnev, 35 other countries, recognized the territorial sovereignty of the Soviet Union, which included the captive nations of Eastern Europe. In 1979, Jimmy Carter placed a big wet kiss on Brezhnev's cheek in Vienna. All this hysteria about this press conference. The president said, look, I could have said it better. I should have said this. And they act like it's the apocalypse. It's not.
That is history in a nutshell. And people forget that fact. We're here for all the reasons he just stated. FDR praising Joseph Stalin at the Yalta Conference in 1945. JFK admitting to a friend that he was rolled over by Khrushchev, which 2 weeks later, the missiles were on their way to Cuba and the Berlin Wall was going up. Ford basically asking Brezhnev to lean over so he could kiss his ass, recognizing occupied European territories as sovereign Russian soil. That's why we're here, guys. Decades and decades and decades of enormously failed foreign policy and incredibly weak leadership. FDR is pretty much the icon of the left. This is a guy who interned Japanese citizens during World War II. And again, at the Yalta Conference, he basically told the world how awesome Stalin was. And that's the thing. The left fails to understand history and doesn't understand how we got here. And we got here because of the left. These iconic left-leaning presidents. Again, let me just remind you people that FDR turned away anti-lynching legislation 2 times. Okay, he helped lead us through the war, and but it's the fact of the matter is, all of them are why we're here.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlow.
Jeannie in Pennsylvania.
I think we've gotten away from what we really hired him to do, which is draining the swamp. If you look at the real picture of draining a swamp, you go in and you take all the water out of it. What does it leave? It leaves the gunk. He cannot get rid of the gunk. We have to get rid of the gunk. Everything he's doing, he's lowering the water so we can see who needs to go. The only way they can go is if we vote them out.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Folks, welcome back. Judge Jeanine Pirro joins me now. She's the host of Fox News Justice with Judge Jeanine, author of Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy, which is going to be, I'm arguing this will be the #1 selling book for the next 4 to 6 months until liberals shut down every venue for us to get it, and we have to go to the black market because heads are going to explode when it comes out. Good morning. How are you, Judge?
I'm terrific. How are you?
I'm in awe, actually, right now at the stupidity, ignorance, and open anti-American sentiment that the left is displaying post-Russia meeting.
They have absolutely lost their mind. I kept saying, what happened? What did I miss? Because I watched this. But look, here's the bottom line. The left wants any reason that they can to impeach Donald Trump. I mean, they still can't get over the fact that they lost, that they couldn't drag that hag across the presidential finish line. And so now what they're trying to do is every time he opens his mouth, they're going to say, now it's treason. I mean, they don't even, I mean, nobody can believe it anymore. Donald Trump has imposed the most serious sanctions against Russia. He is arming the Ukrainians. Barack Obama is the one who did nothing when Russia annexed the Crimea. And, Donald Trump is saying, wait a minute, hey, Germany, why are you buying your energy from Russia and then asking me to protect you from Russia? I mean, Donald Trump has done everything he can, and so much more than the other administrations, like Barack Obama saying, tell Vladimir I'll have more flexibility after the election in that hot mic moment. I mean, it's just crazy, Curt.
The fact of the matter is, every time somebody mentions Clinton and Obama, the left says, get past it. And I try to explain. My first answer, #1, is this. Clinton and Obama and Brennan and Comey and Clapper, they're the reason we're here. If they hadn't done what they did, we wouldn't be talking about any of this stuff. The crimes that they committed, there is no statute of limitations on them, and we're still dealing with the fallout of all of that stuff. And from a legal perspective, I think we have a country full of people waiting for justice.
The scary part about it, Curt, and you say it so clearly, the scary part is that these guys created the foundation for a special prosecutor, a Russia collusion investigation. And as we pull down the veil, we see that this guy, Peter Strzok, along with McCabe and Comey, started a counterintelligence investigation, bought a make-believe dossier to bring to a court so they could spy on a presidential campaign. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that happens in third world countries. And that's why I wrote Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. I want people to see what the liars and the leakers who claim that they have the moral high ground that Donald Trump is the worst thing that's ever happened to this country. And the bottom line is that they are doing everything they can to destroy him. They're having a collective breakdown. They're blown their collective gaskets every time the president says something, when in truth, the economy's never been better. ISIS has been destroyed. We've never been tougher on Russia. I mean, who did the Russia reset button? Who sold our uranium to Russia and got 145 million in return, when we know that it was the Russians bribing people to get to the Clintons so that they could buy this stuff? I mean, this is, it's crazy, but America elected Donald Trump at just the right time. They knew we needed an outsider, and no one at the tip of the spear, Curt, is going to be able to change things without incredible blowback. And that's why I wrote the book, and I make it clear. You're right. Brennan, Clapper, Strzok, McCabe, Comey, Obama, they couldn't deal with the fact that this guy doesn't owe anybody anything. He could be on an island somewhere playing golf, and instead he gets up every day. He takes incoming, and he just continues to make America better for us.
I find it ironic that a man who's working for $0 an hour and who's a billionaire is taking all of this BS. Well, here's the other thing. I've said this before, Judge. I am offended that liberals think I'm as stupid as they are. And listen, let's talk seriously. If you want to talk, the references around the Second World War are embarrassing to me. Now you have apparently Pearl Harbor happened. No one died and no one knew about it, but the second Pearl Harbor happened, according to Joy Behar, which I'm sure her history and foreign policy studies is extensive. But I'm so disgusted that they really honestly believe that we're as stupid and naive as the sheep that follow them blindly. Because that's the only explanation I can have for adults. What's the saying? If you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican at 18, you have no heart. If you're a Democrat at 30, you have no brain. I don't.
It is amazing, Curt. It's crazy.
It is.
And you know what's amazing? They compared it to Kristallnacht. I mean, they compare it to him to Hitler. I mean, this is crazy. Who has been better to Israel than Donald Trump? I was there when the American embassy opened in Jerusalem. I was there when the president did everything he could to make sure that Israel was protected, while Barack Obama sent money through his State Department to support a candidate against Netanyahu. And by the way, all these spy games, they've been going on for decades. And when Donald Trump met with Putin, I mean, everybody meets with Putin. Every president has met with him for the last 75 years. But what do you want Donald Trump to do? I mean, it is, he can't win. He just can't with these people. It doesn't matter because he's winning with America.
To compare what's happening in any way, shape, or form to the beginning of the Holocaust is offensive to me, number one. And number two, I am blown away by the fact that the sheep on the left continue to follow the narrative of, oh my God, Russia tried to interfere with our election. I promise you that there's a history of election interference in every single presidential midterm in the history of U.S.-Russia relations. China's also doing it. Other companies do it, and we do it. We openly did it. That's the audacity of the left. We openly, we made it clear, and we let people know that we stepped into the middle of Israel's election because Obama did not want Netanyahu to be reelected. I mean, and I'm not proud of that. First of all, I'm embarrassed by that, by the way. Which leads me to a real quick one. Ocasio-Cortez is on television, and she talks about the occupation of Palestine. She is questioned on it, and then admits that she doesn't know Middle East foreign relations. Come to find out, this woman got a degree from BU in international relations. I mean, you can't make it up.
Well, you know what? And that is an example of, what is happening in America today, Curt. I mean, people are just voting, and socialism is no longer, a no-no in this country. We had a guy who tried to run for president. Who was an avowed socialist. This Ocasio, whatever her name is a socialist.
I believe that the left is in love with socialism because they don't honestly understand what it is.
Well, you can give them the benefit of the doubt and say, it sounds great, but I always quote Margaret Thatcher. Socialism is great until you run out of other people's money. Let's get back to why we're here, why this is America. This is America because we believe in capitalism. We believe in hard work and being rewarded for that hard work. You don't live off the fat of the land. You get out there like the rest of us who are working 2 and 3 jobs, and as I am, by the way, who pay our taxes and make sure that our job is to take care of our families, take care of ourselves, protect us and protect this country, honor the flag, darn it, and, start respecting the President of the United States. We have never, Curt, in the history of this country, engaged in so much stabbing and so much criticism of a president dreaming about blowing up the White House, carrying his head in effigy. I mean, this is craziness, and it is typical of the left. They're still having their hissy fit. And that's why your listeners and everyone else for these midterms need to understand the difference between truth and a lie. That's why I wrote the book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. It's backed up with facts. I've been a prosecutor, a judge, and a DA for 3 decades. And I had to write the book because I can't take it anymore. People using the Department of Justice for political ends. It's what they do in third world countries.
That's what the KGB does. That's who the KGB is. I mean, they and you can almost make a comparison to the cartels running South America. Here's the thing. We don't have to guess. We know for a fact that the DNC, the Clinton campaign, the Obama administration, the FBI, and the DOJ all conspired to rig a presidential election. That came out. And how that isn't the #1 news story on the planet, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is we know now, based on documentation and evidence, that that's what happened. Yet we're still hysterical over a guy who in 18 months has done more for the American people as a president than all of the presidents in my lifetime after Reagan combined.
Well, yeah, and I think that people need to recognize, and that's why I add in the book, I talk about what this president has done for Americans. More jobs now than we have people to fill them. African American at its lowest in the history, unemployment in the history of this country.
Right.
Whereas the other guy just stoked the racial divide, whether it was Michael Brown or anything else. I mean, that was, and people allowed to riot, protest, under the guise of, oh, this is a peaceful protest. I mean, it's almost like don't believe you're lionized. Don't believe it's as good as it really is. And Peter Strzok typified that when he testified before Congress last week. And he was a composite of arrogant, condescending, and smug, sarcastic. And he wouldn't say when the counterintelligence investigation, how it was started. He said the FBI wouldn't let him. And then the FBI said, oh, yeah, you can. He said, well, then I forgot. I mean, the Americans get it, which is why we elected Donald Trump to begin with. We needed an outsider. We need someone who's going to say, I'm not a part of the establishment where one hand washes the other. I'm going to come in and try to drain this swamp. And anyone at the tip of the spear, Curt, is not in a position to do this without incredible pushback.
The book is called Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy, and it's going to be a barn burner. And I say that for this reason. We're coming up to the midterms, and I don't doubt Newt Gingrich for a second. I think we're going to win 4 to 6 seats. I think the media has so misrepresented the real world like they did around the initial election that you're looking at this blue wave, which is going to amount to be nothing more than a mouse peeing through a strainer, I think. So here's my question. They're not going to let up on this for a couple days. Couple weeks maybe, and as long as they're getting their votes and getting their fundraising, because that's all they're doing. What's next for them? What is next for them? If this turns out to be what I think it's going to be, which is better relationship with Russia, maybe even marginally better, which is a good thing given the fact that we own 90% of the nuclear arsenal on this planet. He does Korea and something happens positive. He does Russia. Where do they go? Do they keep going with the treason thing? I mean, how do they spin the next one?
Well, I don't think there's any question, Curt, that they're going to find something, anything, and they're all going to jump on it in agreement and say, see, I told you so, I told you so. Look, when we're at the point, Curt, where you've got a special counsel who announces the indictment of 12 Russians within 72 hours of the president meeting with Putin, in Helsinki, if you don't see that as political, then you're blind or you're stupid. Right. And as far as I'm concerned, none of those Russians, it's now up to 25. It was 13 a few months ago and now 12. None of them will be extradited, arrested, arraigned, tried, convicted, or sentenced for meddling in the election. And by the way, not one vote was changed. And by the way, Barack Obama himself said, "Oh, you can't rig elections in America. Are you stupid?"
Right.
You know, it's like they'll just figure out something that makes no sense to us, and we're going to keep fighting the fight. But here's the bottom line: ISIS and the caliphate is done. Okay, in the Middle East. The economy has never been better, and that's why I write about it in the book, Liars and Leakers. I make out the case because I've been a prosecutor, a judge, and a DA for 3 decades. I make out the case of what they tried to do to this president, how they tried to tee up a fake investigation, and to this day they defended. Then what we've got is a attorney general who's hiding in a closet somewhere because Rod Rosenstein told him to. No one will ever be prosecuted for the wrongdoing and the corruption in the Department of Justice, and they're going to just keep doing what they've been doing. And I talk in the book about the good things the president has done. This is a story of people having a hissy fit and saying it's almost like fascism. If you disagree with them, you're a fascist. If you disagree with them, you're a racist. It's name calling, just like you said, Curt, just like you said.
We're looking at a body of people, including the mainstream media, who have not followed up or cared about the fact that as the Secretary of the United States, Hillary Clinton allowed, through a Canadian middleman, Russia access to one of the most rare and deadly resources in the world, which was 20% of our uranium. That she did that as the Secretary of State, because ultimately she was the final sign-off. She allowed that to happen. She benefited well north of $100 million in donations to the Clinton Foundation because of it. And this same group of people is apoplectic. That our president sat in a room with the leader of Russia and tried to find some common ground. And I can't, and I say that because I have to say it out loud because I can't follow the logic that connects any of the stuff the left is saying or doing right now, other than, oh my God, I hate Donald Trump. He can't be our president again.
Well, you know, the sale of 20% of our uranium, approved by a committee headed by the State Department, and make no mistake, the State Department was the big dog in this one.
She had the final sign-off.
Back of $145 million to the Clinton Foundation, and then $500,000 cash in the Bill's pocket for a 20-minute speech in a Kremlin-connected place in Russia. I mean, who are we kidding? But the more serious thing, Curt, and I talk about this in the book, is uranium is used not just for bombs, nuclear bombs, it's used for nuclear medicine and Molly 99. And so many of us who've had cancer and who benefit from nuclear medicine, we're buying it from other countries and we're paying more for it after we send the uranium that we need to make it in this country, and it's not made here. The Clintons, you know, I've been a prosecutor, I know crime, and I know a con when I see it. And that's what happened with this sale of uranium approved by the Clintons with the money kicking back to their foundation.
The logic of the left is as follows. If you have porous borders, the resolution is to shut down the law enforcement agency that defends your borders. I can't think of anything stupider than that.
You know, I've been in law enforcement for way too many decades. You know, the only line of defense that we have and the separation between a barbaric and a civilized community is law enforcement. If they don't want law enforcement, you know what? Well, then maybe this isn't the place for them. This is not a global landing spot. This is the United States where people pay their taxes, people work hard, and people simply want to be able to take care of their families. And they want to change it. We're a capitalist country. We're a country of law and order. They even hate the term law and order. So Americans, get ready. 2018 is your chance to say enough of this nonsense. And I truly believe, as Newt Gingrich does, that the midterms are going to be a shock to their conscience.
We'll take your tired, your weak, and your poor as long as they follow our laws and understand.
Yep, that's right. I'm with you.
You know? Hey, listen, the book is called Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy. You can find it and pre-order it anywhere fine books are sold, even through Google search if you work really hard, because I'm sure they're trying to bury it. And I'm going to tell you, you are a God's blessing in the day and age of irrational people. You are what a strong, independent, conservative woman is and stands for, and that's why when the poop hits the fan, I'm glad you're on my team.
Well, thanks, Curt, so much, and thanks to your listeners and the viewers for having and watching and listening to me. Take
Hey,
care.
you take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
You stay safe. We'll catch up again.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
A lot of people not knowing what action they could or should take to make the difference. What I do is try to turn people on to sites like Breitbart, people who are writing and publishing the truth so that people will get educated. But, you kind of can't blame productive members of society who are kind of confused, perplexed as to what do we do to take this government back.
Sirius XM Patriot Channel 125.
We want to hear from you. Tweet the show at Garrick38. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Joining me now, first time I've ever had a chance to talk to this gentleman, a man who I have immense amounts of respect for, who is daily espousing the ideology and the conservative values that this country was founded on. There's probably no one that doesn't know who he is. He's a Hollywood conservative. He was the host of Love Connection and Back in 2 and 2, Fisherman. I did not know you were a Navy veteran, which I think is awesome. And he's political activist. He is Chuck Woolery. Good morning, Chuck. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you? Good to see you this morning. Good to hear you anyway.
It's great to finally talk to you. I've wanted to have you on the show forever because as I started to become vocal about my conservative values, and you and James Woods were a couple of the voices that were out there as kind of a life raft in the middle of the ocean kind of a thing. By the way, guys, you can follow him at Chuck Woolery, Woolery, on Twitter. There's so much to talk about. I was just talking with Judge Jeanine Pirro about the psychotic results from the left out of this Russia conference, and listening to the left compare this to Pearl Harbor and Kristallnacht and the Cold War, the dramatics. First of all, give me your takeaway from the meeting between Putin and Trump.
I tweeted out on Friday before this meeting that no matter what Trump does and what he says, it will be the wrong thing. And I was correct. No matter what he did, it's the wrong thing. He has a certain style that he has that is different from politicians because he's a businessman. And the left hates him. The right hates him. I mean, it's interesting because he is really the enemy of the establishment in Washington, which includes Republicans and Democrats. And I think it's very confusing to people. And mainly because he has come in there as an interrupter and has started to do things and clean things up and solve problems that they never thought he could do, and they didn't want him to do it because it exposes how ineffective they are in their leadership. So they're both after him. And this whole thing with Putin and what happened in Helsinki is, what does the left want? They want him to come in with a AK-40 and just blow him away. I mean, they want him to confront him, and that's what's going to satisfy him. Then that won't be right because it'll be over the top. So it doesn't really matter. They're so exercised right now over every little thing. Kurt, they have nothing to run on. They literally have no. What are they going to make the economy better? I heard them say that the other day. It's insane. Yeah. And then I was watching MSNBC this morning and CNN because I do like to watch the competition. So I'm watching MSNBC, and Barnacle says, well, liberal democracy is now gone. I worry for my children and grandchildren. Well, what the hell is liberal democracy? We live in a republic, and it's not a democracy. The founding fathers hated democracy. So.
You know what? The left wants no Trump. That's the only that there is no other.
And neither do the Republicans. They don't want Trump.
Exactly
either.
Right. Exactly right. And I was listening to Rand Paul, and I got to tell you, in the last 18 months, I've become a huge Rand Paul fan. I disagree with some of what he says and does, but I disagree with a lot of different things of people that I vote for, recognizing that there is no perfect candidate. I heard it said yesterday, Donald Trump could walk on water and the left would complain that he can't swim. I mean, that's where we're at. And going back, I mentioned this to the judge earlier, and I'm curious to hear your take on this from the standpoint of every time someone brings, and I do bring it up, talk about Clinton and the Uranium One scandal and Obama, and clearly we know now that the DNC and the Clinton campaign and the Obama administration, the FBI, DOJ, Justice Department, were all in cahoots to rig a presidential election in this country. And every time I say something about them, everybody says, you know what, who cares about Clinton and Obama, move on. I try to explain to them, you don't understand. They're the reason we're here. The crimes that they committed, the things that they did have led us to this place. I don't know if it's going to be years or decades as we unravel this, if we can ever unravel it and put the genie back in the bottle. But these people are responsible for what is actually high crime and treason. That argument is, it's the, just move on. And this is the same group of people. I think you and I were probably aligned in our pre-presidential voting, and that I wanted someone that was anti-establishment. I wanted someone that wasn't a politician. This is what it looks like. This is what a conservative that isn't a politician looks like. The Ocasio-Cortez in New York is what a liberal looks like that isn't a politician.
Well, it's interesting because you're correct, of course. Our government is so corrupt, and I think that's why the American people elected Donald Trump, because they felt like he wasn't corrupt. So in order to justify how corrupt they are, they have to make sure that we think that he's corrupt. So they turn the entire, and by the way, this whole intel, this beautiful intel question, who do you trust, your intel or Putin?
Right.
What an inappropriate question that was coming from the AP. Number one, the intel community of Obama tried every way in the world to oust Trump and ruin his reputation and make sure that he didn't win. And if he did win, that we would be sorry that we ever elected him. So I can understand how he would say, I don't trust either one. Thank you very much. Right. You got Clapper, you got Brennan, you got all these people who have been around since you mentioned Clinton. And of course, that's Bill Clinton, along with Hillary Clinton and everything else. It's fascinating to me, Curt, that we, the American people, can absolutely see, if we're paying any attention at all, how corrupt the left, the progressive left in this country is, and how corrupt our government is, and how deep it goes, and what they'll do to protect themselves. And it's why we really asked Trump to become president and demanded by our votes that he do. And it's one of the reasons why he is up against when Chuck Schumer said, don't screw around with the intel community because they got 15 different ways from Wednesday to get you. Well, he's got a lot of people in Washington who want to get him. And we're the ones who are girding him up. And by the way, I'm not in a conga line someplace saying everything he does is right. But the point is, he's far more conservative than I ever thought he was going to be. And I'm pleasantly surprised. Most people have no idea what conservatism is. They don't understand what it means. Most people don't want to know. Even on the right, a lot of people don't understand what conservatism is. But
that's a great
point. An interesting question
Chuck,
that was posed today on the radio. I heard somebody talking. They said, well, you're a liberal, right? The guy said, yes. And he was a very congenial guy. And he said, tell me something. Describe what a progressive is to me. And the guy was very bright, very articulate. He had no clue what a progressive was. He has no idea the history of progressives. He has no idea that it's Hegelism, it's statism, it's everything that was born out of Marx. It was the mother of Marxists and fascists, and every ism you can think of was socialism on top. He has no clue that progressivism is the mother of all that stuff. So when you say progressive Democrat, you're just basically saying I'm a Marxist Democrat.
That's exactly right. And it's one of the things I was talking about earlier. I argue now that these college kids that are marching in the streets in Antifa, they're arguing for fascism or socialism because they do not know what it actually is. Margaret Thatcher saying, everybody loves socialism until they run out of other people's money. Part of that is what you're hearing from the left, the ignorance of history. The willful ignorance in many cases, but also the large group of people that are being led around by a news media that is misrepresenting what's happened in history. And I was listening to Mark Levin talk, who I think is just a genius, talking about the past. The past is what made us and what has gotten us here. When you listen to in 1945 at the Yalta Conference, and FDR was praising Stalin as this once in a generation
FDR's first
guy.
vice president was a communist.
Exactly right.
He was a registered communist. He ran for president, by the way, as a communist.
John Brennan was a member of the Communist
Party. The right
Party.
has none, and yet they accuse us. So,
John Brennan was a card-carrying member of the Communist Party during the Cold War.
Exactly right, during 9/11.
is that not a relevant thing? Because we're being led to believe that the comments that President Trump made on the bus 2 decades ago and an illicit affair that he had are much more meaningful and impactful to this nation's security than that former head of the CIA being a member of the Communist Party. How do you get that logical train of thought, and how do you connect those dots?
Well, here's the thing, Kurt. Progressivism, in order for it to operate and work, you have to get rid of the past. This is why they don't teach American history anymore, because they hate American history. You can't have, first you attack the faith, that has to go away. Then you attack everything that happened in the past, and you put that aside. So progressivism says we start today. We start today and we move on. We never look back at the past, because the past is so disgusting and so corrupt and so bad that we need to start brand new. Well, of course, that's ridiculous, because you can't learn anything if you don't know your history. And that's one of the reasons American history is not taught anywhere in any school today that I'm aware of, especially on the college level. They don't even discuss American history, because they hate the history of this country.
You remember when the statues were all being torn down of the Confederate generals and all the things. I put up a picture right next to a picture of ISIS terrorists tearing down statues across the Middle East of things that were offensive to them. And I said, please tell me what the difference is. These are people who are destroying monuments because it goes against their ideology, no matter the fact that that is part of our history. Listen, I can't speak for you, but I don't know anybody that was a slave, and I don't know anybody that owned slaves. I recognize that slavery was a very dark part of this country's history, but I also recognize that I'm pretty sure we're the only country that fought a civil war to get rid of it.
Well, Mark Levin had a great show on Sunday, and he talked to a man, I can't think of his name, but he talked about what was happening in the black community, which I thought was very enlightening and very interesting. And he said, slavery hasn't been around for 100 years. That's true. But he said the black people have been enslaved to a certain extent. And they become a community, and so they have a community orientation. They think as a community. They think as black people, they all come together, and this is what they think, and they're monolithic. But he said they did that to protect themselves, and it worked. But he said now, the problem is that we have individual liberty, and so do they. And with this individual liberty comes a certain responsibility that all of a sudden you're responsible for yourself, and the community is not going to back you up. But a lot of people just, like these protests and everything, they're really historic. They're past history. It doesn't matter anymore. You don't really need to get out and march against this stuff, and which is one of the reasons this whole thing with the NFL just didn't work. They thought it would work, but it didn't work. It's old. It's not the truth anymore. People are free. Black people, Asians, I don't care who you are, Indians, they're all free people. And we have these liberties. Now you have to have individual responsibility, and you have to grow into that, because it is a burden. It's interesting because liberty and freedom is an individual burden. And you have to learn to live with it.
With liberty and freedom comes accountability. And that is the thing missed, so desperately missed in the younger generation of people these days, because everything that's bad in their lives is because of somebody else.
That's like kind of human nature, though, isn't it? I mean, you always want to blame somebody.
And it is. You're exactly right. But as I would argue, as conservatives, you grow up learning. I can tell you this. The one thing I've tried to teach my 3 boys that I was taught by my father, and one thing we tried to teach and instill, being accountable for your actions solves a lot of your life's problems. Life is a whole lot easier. There are pain points. They're always going to be. But that's how you grow and mature. You look back on your mistakes and say, yeah, okay, you know what? I don't want to do that again. And the left is saying, well, those things, those challenging points in my life, those weren't my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. And I love the word in this sense. I hate the word in the context it's used. But the fact of the matter is the plantation has gone from the tobacco fields in the South to the inner city government welfare programs in the North. And the fact of the matter is, if you can spend your whole life at home not having to work, there are people who like that. Unfortunately,
sure.
And when you look at the New Deal and when you look at the middle 30s when the black vote switched from Republican to Democrat, there was no party switch. That's been factually proven to be a complete lie. The switch became because the left became the party of welfare, the welfare state. Hey, listen, we need your votes, but we don't need you to prosper, because if you prosper and you understand what's available to you, you're not going to like our policies. So here's just enough money to tread water. You can't swim, but you can tread water. And for 100 years, now we're seeing, my God, you look at Candace Owens and Ben Carson and Alan West and all of these strong, black, successful men and women. And by the way, Chuck, the fact of the matter is black employment is at a level never before seen. So the narrative that our president's racist, which was a joke to begin with, is even bigger BS than it's ever been. But I want to finish with one last question. And I asked this, and I'm curious. I've been asking this of all my guests. I asked it of Sheriff Clark yesterday. What's next? You and I are watching a news cycle that really is inundated and just consumed by the world's going to end stories every day. And as soon as they stop raising money or getting votes they move to the next thing. This is going to have legs. This Russia thing's going to have legs right up until we sign a peace treaty and the left goes berserk. What's next for them? I mean, is this Kavanaugh thing going to come back up? Because he's getting confirmed. We
have to protect ourselves from enemies, foreign and domestic. And, this is not hyperbole, Kurt. It's the Democrat Party have become the enemy of America and the enemy of our Constitution, which they don't believe in, they don't like. They're the enemy of the Bill of Rights. They're the enemy of all of these things. So we are literally fighting against an enemy within. And at least I believe that. That's not to say that every Democrat down the line who votes Democratic understands that or even is a part of that. But from a leadership point of view, that's where they are. And what's next? Well, we've got this last crisis. Everything is, the mainstream media will come up with one crisis after another. It's a faux crisis. It's not a real one. This whole thing with Putin is not a real crisis. They just manufactured it. So they will manufacture other crises. They will, week to week unleash this. When one kind of softens up and goes away, they'll come up with something new. Mueller is part of their crisis, and that eventually will come to an end. The midterm elections will probably determine what the next big crisis is. If we win the midterm elections, and hopefully we will, and continue to carry Congress and support Trump for a change as he goes into the last part of his first 4 years and then into the second part, because I believe there's no question, unless something incredible happens, he will be reelected. And so as long as that support will eventually come along and they'll realize that nobody's going to get him out of office, he's there to stay, and maybe they'll start supporting him. They'll build a wall. They'll do the kinds of things that we have to do, and the Republican Congress, at least, will support the police, will support ICE, will support our borders, will support our law, which basically the Democrats have no respect for at all. So it's going to be a very interesting time. It'll always be volatile as long as you're contrary to what the deep state wants to accomplish. And they want to get back to business as normal for them. And business is not normal for them right now. And Trump has been the single interrupter. He has taken the mask off the left. People can look and say, okay, this is who these guys are. And they either accept it or they reject it. And hopefully it'll be rejected. The emperor truly has no clothes when it comes to the left. Hey, I want to finish up, and I would love to have more time. Tell people, I know you're busy as heck, but tell people where they can find you and what you're up to. Well, I have a site called Blunt Force Truth. It's bluntforcetruth.com, and we have a daily page of news and things that we do. We also have podcasts, bluntforcetruth.com. You can find us on Twitter and iTunes and iHeartRadio. And so Mark Young and I do that as a host and co-host. And we've been fairly successful. So, I'm just a voice in the wilderness like everybody else. I know I'm a celebrity. I know, like, you're a celebrity. But quite frankly, when it all comes down to it, we're just citizens of this country who love the country and want to uphold the Constitution with our conservative values. And that's what I'm trying to spread, is to just an understanding of what's going on so that people at least can get a grip on what they're up against and what's the upside and what's the downside. So it's just a matter of explanation and knowing your enemy. Because the Democrats at this point, quite frankly, I believe are enemies. They certainly have always looked as Republicans like that. They've always thought the Republican Party was evil. We just thought they were the other party. But we really need to start looking at the Democrat Party as a party in their leadership, not as the individuals who vote, but as their leadership, and understand what they are. Now, we have problems in the Republican Party. There's no question about that. But let's get rid of the Democrat liberal, how can I say this? Liberal socialist, Marxist attitudes. Get rid of them first, and then we'll clean up the Republican Party if we can, concentrate and get that done with our votes. It's hard to believe a lot of these guys. They say things that just aren't true. I mean, Mitch McConnell runs as a conservative all the time. He's anything but a conservative, and so is Rand Paul.
Well, he is the establishment.
Paul Ryan.
Yeah, he is the
it's
true
confusing to people, and I understand that.
BluntForceTruth.com. Listen, Chuck, I can't thank you enough. I would love to have you back and keep catching up. This is good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Curt. Thanks for having me on. It's been my pleasure.
All right.
Thanks again.
That's Chuck Woolery, BluntForceTruth.com. You got to check it out. You can follow him on Twitter at Chuck Woolery. Guys, this was about as fun a show as I've done. Two amazing guests, and I look forward to tomorrow. Have a great day. God bless. Thanks for tuning in. We will check with you guys tomorrow.
Everything in hip-hop is not bad. Kanye agreed with us, so let's love him today until he raps tomorrow and you turn your back. Because if you jump off when the fun of the moment is over, then you are in fact making Kanye the token he is accused of being. So please, don't do that. Don't go there.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson. Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.